Two guys sitting a meter apart, filming a video. Yep. Call that COVID. Hey, my name is Josh,
And my name is Ignatius.
and welcome to your first e-catechism lesson. You probably haven't seen us around church before, or if you have, you don't know our names. Well, now you know our names, but you don't know anything about us. So we'll do a bit of an intro. As I said, my name is Josh. I am waiting for NS this year because I turned 20 and I just finished my diploma in psychology.
Right. So, like Josh, I'm 20 this year. I'm waiting for enlistment as well. I just completed my diploma in nursing.
Nursing.
Yeah, nursing.
Alright. Can you tell us a fun fact about the situation?
Oh, fun fact. Don't use the hand sanitizers in your lift. That's pretty dirty.
Anyway, we are your youth catechists for L7B and L7C. And we thought it'd just be a little more engaging, a little more fun to do a video rather than just send you guys a bunch of slides. Because, I don't think anyone likes reading a bunch of slides, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, so depending on how this goes, if you guys like it, we'll do more videos, if that's helpful.
So, Josh, what are we doing today?
So today we are going to be learning about salvation history. Actually, what do you know from the words salvation history?
Isn't it that collection of stories in the Bible where God just calls people and promises certain things?
Right, it's something like that. Yeah, so the word salvation comes from the term to save, or to be saved, right? And history, as we know it, just means the story. So, put two and two together, salvation history is the story of being saved.
Oh, quick math.
Yeah, man, quick math. But it goes deeper than that, right? It's the story of how God has saved us throughout thousands and thousands of years of time.
So, Josh, can you tell me why is salvation history so important, or why is history necessary?
And that's a good question, right? Why do we need to know about these old stories that have nothing to do with us? Well, I guess the answer is a bit simple, right? We can take a look around us, actually. If you look outside the window, you see a bunch of high-rise buildings, right? In Singapore, we live in this beautiful city built in an urban landscape. But why, right? How did we come to get here? And that's what history tells us. So if we look at Singapore history, we know that there's a story of Sang Nila Utama, right? He came to Singapore. He was like, I'm gonna name this place Singapore, right? And later on, from a fishing village, it became a city, right? As Sir Stamford Raffles came in and Lee Kuan Yew took over, and we built the city up, right? So that's what history tells us. History tells us how we got here today by telling us the story of what happened before.
So am I right to say, Josh, that salvation history is important because it tells us about how we are saved?
Right, and yeah, I think you rightly put it just now, right? That salvation history is all about the story of God's promises to us, how He saved us from sin and stuff like that. So what salvation history tells us for today is how we have been saved. It's about God's promises to us today and that relationship we have with Him now. It's going to help us to understand that a little bit more.
Alright, Josh, can you give me a brief summary of salvation history, or rather run down like the stories that happen in the Bible?
Well, a brief summary is a bit of a stretch, right? Because it takes place over thousands of years. But it begins with creation, right? It begins with God creating Adam and Eve, creating the world, right? Adam really means mankind. So it happens with God creating mankind, man sinning, and it goes on all the way to Jesus, who saves us from that original sin. Right? So we've got people like Noah, we've got Moses, we've got David, and everyone else along the line. And what we're going to find is through each of these people's stories, we're going to see two common trends. We're going to see God's promises to them, and we're going to see how their relationship with God played a part in the bigger story, how it led to the next person's story, and the next person's story, and the next person's story. Right, so we go down the line of each person, right, and we end off in this place called Perusia. It hasn't come yet, but Perusia is really when God comes back and everything becomes one.
Okay, that's interesting. So why didn't God start with Perusia?
That's a really good question, right? Why didn't God just start by becoming one with all of us? Right? Again, salvation history, or the story of God and us, is all about relationship.
Okay.
And as with any relationship, or as with understanding anything, it has to happen gradually, because we need to realize God is really big. Think about it this way. We go through several years of school, right? We go through kindergarten, then primary school, we take PSLE, which you guys just finished last year. Then we take O levels in secondary school or N levels, and then we go on to tertiary, so on and so forth, right? We can't give an O level paper to a kindergartner because they don't understand it yet, right? They're going to be overwhelmed. And it's sort of the same with God and us. God can't just reveal everything. He can't just reveal himself at one shot because we're going to be overwhelmed.
It's just kind of like a process.
Yeah, it's a process, right? It's a process of learning to understand. It's a process of learning God. But I guess the big question is if it's this whole story of God saving humans and about our relationship with God, it's a bit abstract and it may not feel like it has anything to do with us today. Because, I mean, you don't see people being called to go build an ark or being called to climb a mountain and then prophesy to everyone, right? But actually, God is still making promises to us today. Right? He's still building that relationship with us. And actually, I think Ignatius, you mentioned that you have a story.
Something similar, but I don't think it's that much of a promise per se. So, this happened when I was in primary 2, right? There was this dude that went up to like the pulpit to like say that they are recruiting for the altar service. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice which told me to join altar service. Like, oh, you should join the altar service. But it definitely wasn't the voice of the guy on the pulpit, right? Or was it my father or my mother or the people around me, because they were really, really silent. So after Mass, I just went to try and sign up, but this really tall dude who's just like, maybe you could try again next year because we need you to be primary 3 at least, to have your first Holy Communion first. And it was a little disheartened. I was like, oh, okay, better luck next year then, maybe. And as soon as I walked away, the tall dude just came back and said, I think can lah. He's tall enough lah. Can fake it a bit lah. We got this. So yeah, I guess that's my very first story.
Right, thanks for sharing that, man. I think that's an interesting story, right? Because if we compare it to some of the stories in salvation history, we can see that God called Ignatius, right? Like he called the other people. Let's say Moses, right? He appeared to Moses in a burning bush. Moses was like, whoa, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right, but alright, I'll do what you say. And Ignatius is sort of the same thing. He heard a voice like, whoa, what the heck?
Yeah, minus the burning bush though.
Yeah.
They'll be pretty intense during Mass.
I think that'll be pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
During Mass though.
You see church set on fire.
Oh no.
I think what's interesting is that at first, he wasn't accepted, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the guy said, try again next year.
Yeah, try again next year.
But it still worked out. He got called back.
Yeah.
And I think that's salvation history, right? That's the story of God's promises. When God calls you, He's gonna make sure it follows through. Isaiah. I think it's Isaiah.
What does it say?
He said, "No word shall leave my mouth and come back empty."
Okay.
And I think that's the story of salvation history, right? Now, it's not as big as things like becoming a king like David or saving the world like Jesus, but it's these small pockets of God's work in our lives that build up our stories and build up the bigger stories as time progresses.
So it's small things leading to bigger things, not that much of like the huge happenings in the past.
Yeah, right. And I think that's where we get it wrong a lot of the time. We think God needs to be this huge miracle that happens, but really it's in everyday things. If we think about it, if Ignatius never got to join the altar service, or if he never responded to that, right, he wouldn't have stayed in church for so long, he wouldn't have joined a youth group, he wouldn't have served, and he wouldn't be here catechizing with me today. We can see the whole story looking back, right? But moving forward, it's all about saying yes and being open. And I think that's what salvation history is about. I think that's what today's lesson of salvation history is about. Not knowing what our story is going to be. We can hope for our story, right? We can hope for these promises. But ultimately, I think the most important thing is going to be about being open to whatever's happening. But we don't have to understand it because we only understand looking back. I think Steve Jobs said that. We only connect the dots looking back.
So Josh, you've spoken a lot, right? So the question is, where does it all begin?
This thousands of years of stories of God saving us, of God revealing Himself, right, leads to today, leads to your story. I think that's what catechism is about. That's what catechism is going to be about. That's why this is the first lesson, because it's all going to be about you and God. It's going to be about your relationship. It's not just about learning technical things. It's not just about listening to hymns. It's not just listening to older people right, talk about the gospel. It's going to be about how it's all relevant to you, how God is working in your life today. So I think as we continue on today's lesson, as you go through the slides, you're gonna find out more in depth about all the stories in the Bible, right? All the stories in salvation history, and it's gonna lead to your blank page. So yeah, really just be open and look through the slides and answer the questions in the reflection link, because we want to find out more about you. We do wait for the day that we get to see you guys face to face, but until then,
this is us in a video,
I've been Josh.
and I've been Ignatius.
We're still Josh and Ignatius after this, but we will see you guys in the next lesson.
Bye!